language therapists are expertly trained to continue to support and advocate for their patients and service users. It is with my great pleasure to invite Jude to come and talk to Midweek Matters this month on our month exploring diet, nutrition, and everything in between.
Thank you very much for that that fantastic introduction, and hello everybody and good evening. It is hope you've all had good days. It feels very dark and very January, isn't it? So hopefully we can enliven it up a bit with talk about, well, I've been asked whether I can talk to you mainly about dysphagia, about swallowing, and I think what I'd like to do is to give you a bit of information about how we do that, which is actually not as easy as we take for granted, but in a really informal way. I have pictures, I have information. I'm going to just throw it all out at you, but if you're getting squeamish, please let me know. I've tried to keep it as least squeamish as possible, but I find this stuff really interesting. Basically, swallowing is like plumbing, but I think it's probably a little bit more complicated than that. And we have so many muscles and things that we use to swallow safely. So as you can tell, I get very excited about dysphagia. And thank you for that introduction, Miriam. I gave a bit of blurb. So yes, I am extremely old and I've been working for an extremely long time in this area, but I've got a very wide breadth of what I do, and my brief here tonight is to talk about dysphagia and eating, drinking and swallowing, but also a bit about speech therapists anyway, and how you might like to access them if you've got any really specific questions for you. The other thing that I'm not really able to do on this call, I can give you general advice, but I don't think that I can give you very, very specific advice, but I can generally push you in the right direction to make sure you do get any support that you might need moving forward. Now, I've put together some slides only because otherwise you get me flapping my arms around. So what I'm going to try and do is to share my screen with you. Now, can you see that? Look at that. I've chosen the biggest, boldest font I could find, so apologies all around if it's a bit shouty, but we're going to move on quite rapidly. Very quickly, this is what I'm going to just cover with you tonight. We know that speech therapists work with more than swallowing problems, and you can't do one without the other as a speech therapist, and to look at the whole of you, we have to look at your communication and swallowing. But tonight we're just going to narrow in and talk about dysphagia. I'm going to talk about what it is, how does it work, the swallowing bit, what about you and how you're finding it all, how to access speech therapists, and then I'm opening the floor to where we go from here. Okay. So I think you don't need to hear any more about me at all. I think I put this slide together quite rapidly. So it says me. So hello, I'm Jude Broll. I'm a speech and language therapist. I think the only thing to say about speech and language therapists as a profession, not many people know what we do until you need us. And that goes to say, even for doctors and nurses and the media don't really know what speech and language therapists do, which is really frustrating because I think what we do is pretty amazing. And I'm not very biased, but I think because we do the swallowing and the communication together, and we really advocate for people who find eating, drinking, swallowing, but also communication challenging, I think that's fairly key to how we live the best lives that we can do. We also offer cradle to grave service. So I've worked with neonates, so to really little wee ones, and I've also worked with end of life care and everything in between. And I think that is something that we should be really proud of. So you in your journey through life may have had access to speech and language therapists as a child, or in school, or in an outpatient clinic, or I hope not hospital, but maybe. And it may be that you have different little chunks of time with a speech and language therapist, both helping with communication if you need it, and with swallowing if you do as well. So we do both, and we do all of it, and we do it right across the ages. There aren't enough of us, so sometimes it's really hard to gain access to speech therapists, but often speech therapists aren't thought of as people to refer to, especially with some problems. And I think of us as like the glue that holds us all, that holds people together sometimes, but maybe I'm also a little bit biased. Now, I can't see all of you on the screen, so if you've got any questions, if you can pop it in the chat, and I'm going to be asking Emma and Miriam just to monitor that, because I can't actually multitask at this time of night because I haven't got any coffee in me yet. So I'm just going to so what is dysphagia? It's really a medical term, and I think sitting at College of Speech Therapists, we're trying to move away from that term, because what does it mean? It makes it sound like there's a medical problem, but this could be a lifelong problems that people live with, that people have problems with eating, drinking and swallowing all the way through their life. So EDS, eating, drinking and swallowing, is sort of the new term that I'm going to use more. But in referrals or talking to other professionals, you may find that people still talk about dysphagia. And that is the whole thing of how you get the food from your plate or from the glass of beer, whatever you're having, into your stomach, so your body can start using the nutrients in a meaningful way. So I think that's the sort of the widest term that we have as terms of dysphagia. So why is it so important? And I think this slide I could talk about all day. I won't, clearly, but because it is so basic to survival, that I think eating, drinking and swallowing is something that people really take for granted, says Miriam, having a cup of tea. I think it's about, people don't know it's a problem until there is a problem with it. That sounds a bit glib, but I think that is probably the same as anything. You don't notice that your knee hurts until it hurts. And because it is so very complicated, swallowing, there are so many bits of it that could go wrong. I think it's about finding the right section of it to solve. But if you think about what eating, drinking and swallowing is, it's often linked to social activities. We've just had this massively brilliant festive season. Most of us met family and friends either for food or for drink or in a pub, or you went out. That's what you do when you celebrate. You often have something to, you cheer them with a glass of some fizz or something like that. And I think if you're ill, everybody turns up with grapes and wants to feed you. And there is a real sort of emotional link between food and getting it right. Now that's fine if it's all going down the right hole. But if you're finding that difficult, it can make social interaction a little bit awkward. I think as well, if you're eating and drinking at the same time, and if swallowing is something that's not really coordinated for you, that can cause problems. We're always told as a kid, don't eat with your mouth full. That's good advice. Sorry, don't talk with your mouth full, apologies. But I think sometimes it's hard, isn't it? When you're chatting with somebody, you're going out for a coffee with somebody, how do you do that? How do you pace it? And if you need to concentrate on swallowing more, you might need to have a break. And some people like to eat in silence. So it's about what works for you. I couldn't think of it. I talk far too much. I think there are cultural aspects to this as well. There are some cultures that have this need to feed, to have fat babies, and you've got to feed them and feed them and feed them. Otherwise you've failed as a mother. And some people, you have to think about what sort of food they can eat. Do you have to have a halal diet or a kosher diet for that individual? Maybe there are things about certain types of food that you eat at certain types of the year. And again, you need to think about that in terms of eating, drinking and swallowing. And where and when you eat. Maybe if you're really tired, if fatigue is an issue for you, you may find that eating in the evening, you just don't want to have your main meal at night. And that's absolutely fine. If the best time for you is lunchtime, eat then. I can't do breakfast. It's too early. I'm not waking up yet. But that means that I have to shunt what I eat to later in the day. But then if you eat late at night, it just sits in your belly as well. So it's a tricky one. But I think you have to know how you're feeling and how physically you're feeling when you do that. Also what you eat. Are there certain textures that are tricky for you? I've had lots of patients saying, God, lettuce is a nightmare, or toast is a problem, or don't eat nuts, or I find minestrone soup a real challenge. So thinking about what you eat and how you eat is really important. And also your posture and how you eat and drink. So for example, lying back, you are fighting gravity. Things are going to be much harder for your muscles, for your breathing, and for everything you do. It's sitting upright, really upright, when you eat and drink is the best posture for you to do that. Sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it's not comfortable. And if you're very tired, it might be difficult to stay upright. So again, thinking it's a really suddenly, I hope you're appreciating, it's suddenly getting really complicated, all this eating stuff. And we haven't even got to the tech bit yet. I'm going to move on, but I'm going to open the floor here because I've got a question for you. If I was to ask of you, which bits of kit, what anatomy do you use to eat and drink? Shout out stuff. What do you think you would use? What bits of your body do you use to eat and drink?
Your throat.
Your throat, absolutely. Your throat. Yep, good start. Anything else?
Teeth.
Teeth. Yep. Sorry, I didn't hear the other one.
Your mouth.
Your mouth, absolutely. Your teeth, your throat, your mouth. What
Your
else?
lips.
Your lips. I like that one. That's a good one. Oh, cheeky giveaway there. Sorry about that. Anything else? This is a trick question. You're doing really well. I want one other bit of kit that's quite useful.
Muscles in your mouth.
Muscles in your mouth. I like that one.
Your tongue.
Hey, there you go. Whoever said tongue gets 10 points. There you go. That's the one I was going to use. I'm going to show you a picture of what you look like if I was to cut you straight down the middle. I'm not planning on doing it. All right. But I think this is really helpful. And I'm going to keep coming back to this. So you're absolutely right. I'm going to see if I can use my yeah. Okay. Oh, look. Can you see my pointer?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Blimey, we are on fire tonight. So you're right. You need your lips. You totally. I'm a great fan of the tongue. Your teeth, very important, and your throat. So all of these things work together. Then timing is split-second timing with all of this is really important. All right. What I am planning on doing is to talk you through how you swallow in a little bit of detail. Is that useful before I keep launching? Shall I keep going, guys? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to keep coming back to this picture in a bit more detail. So just to give you an orientation, if we cut you in half, that's the tip of your nose and you're breathing in there. And then you've got your sinuses and that warms up the air and it takes out the bigger bits of pollution and stuff that's moving around in there in the air. And then it can go down the back of your throat. And sometimes if the air's really cold and you breathe in, you get quite a sore throat. Your mouth and my throat feels quite dry and quite sore because, as you can see, oh, I've lost my thing, that air can go all the way down there and then it goes straight down into your airway. So down there are your lungs, right? So as you can see, it's all open, 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 open. So as you are listening to me, you are breathing through your mouth or your nose and air is going all the way down there, and then down into your airway, all right? But if we then go back to your mouth, we have your lips, which not only help when you talk, and you can see me moving my lips around a lot. You need your lips absolutely to eat and drink, swallow safely. You then have your teeth. Those are the top, that's your hard palate. So if you run your finger along the top of your mouth, that's the hard bone there. If you ever had braces, oh, I've lost my, there you go, then that's where it sits, all right? At the back, there's a flappy bit. And if you see in all the, if you know in all the cartoons, if somebody screams and there's that flobby bit that hangs down at the back of your throat, that's there. Oh, lost it. That's your uvula, right? That bit that hangs down there. That's going to be really important to swallow safely when we get there, okay? Then you've got, my friend, the tongue. Love the tongue. And it's massive. Your tongue is enormous. It goes right from the tip of with your teeth all the way down round to the back of your throat. And if you think about that distance, that's a lot of big muscle. You can tell I love tongues. They're really interesting things. That's the back wall of your throat, called your pharynx if you're a doctor, and this flappy thing here is called your epiglottis, which is a big bit of cartilage that sits at the back of your tongue. And we'll come back to why that's important later. Those two lines are your vocal cords. So this is your voice box. This is the thing you're hearing me now using, my voice box, and that goes down into your airway. And then behind it, there is a little stopper there. It's like a very tight muscle that sits, it's normally closed. And then that's your esophagus. So that's your food pipe that goes down to your stomach. All right. So that is the kit that we use all day, every day, from the minute we're born onwards, to talk and to eat and to drink. Can you now see why I'm so excited about all of this? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to keep moving, shall I? How does this work? Well, because we're speech therapists, we have to list stuff. And as speech therapists, we have realized that there are 4 stages of swallowing. There is the pre-oral, so pre-getting in your mouth stage, the oral stage, so what happens when the food or the drink is in your mouth, the pharyngeal phase, which is throat phase, if you like, and esophageal phase, which is when it goes down into your guts, right? The reason I'm talking you through this in so much detail is because you can then see how things can go horribly wrong and what we can then do about it. So I think the thing to remember is that this is all, a lot of it is under our control and a lot of it is under reflexes and we can't control it. So there are certain things that we can do to help ourselves and there are certain things that we might need to get some help with if there are any challenges. So first of all, if we think about what happens even before the food and drink gets to our mouth, now we've talked about how important food and drink looks like. So I'm sure, you know, we've all watched, I don't know, MasterChef, and everybody spends hours with teeny tiny little bits of blobs of coulis of thick this, that, the other, and they make everything look beautiful because it makes you want to eat it more, because if things look nice, then isn't that great? So if you had some grey slop on your plate, you might go, I might miss that meal. If it was this beautiful plate with all these blits and blobs around it, you think, oh, yum, let's give that a go. So absolutely, as soon as you see it, your taste buds get going, your saliva gets going, and things get quite exciting. You can think, oh, yeah, oh, I'm getting quite excited by this now. And then think of the smell. If you go into a bakery and there's all these delicious smells, again, if you go back to that diagram, your nose and your mouth are so linked that smell is so important. You remember going into school canteens and you smell of like boiled cabbage, you're thinking, well, this is going to be nice. And that's going to stop you maybe wanting to eat as much. Maybe they do that on purpose, I don't know. But it's really important. These bits are as important as what happens when they get in your mouth. I think temperature is very important, but it's also really personal. So I know people who can't drink tea till it's stone cold, and I know people who have to have soup boiling hot. But there is a limit to what you can do, and often you get a surprise. So if you get ice cream that you're expecting to be, I don't know, a certain temperature, and it's either not or it is, you kind of get confused in your mouth of what you're going to be eating and drinking. And then you also need to think about how you're feeling, and if you've got good stuff on the telly, and should you be listening to that rather than concentrating on what you're eating and drinking? Are people talking to you or not? There's so much to think about your environment and the time of day, what mood you're in. And also we're back to how tired you're feeling. And then feeding mode. Now I put this in because I have worked with a lot of people with cerebral palsy and MS and MND who need help feeding. And actually it's really hard, and it's a real skill to get that right. So if you need help feeding, you are working as a team to make sure that the food is the right temperature, there's enough food on the plate, that you're pacing at the person that you are feeding or is telling you when they want food in your mouth, and when you don't want it in your mouth, when you're ready for it and you're not, don't whack it in with big mouthfuls, etc. It is a real skill, and it's a skill of the person who is being fed to talk to the person who's feeding them. But it might also take longer, might take shorter. And I think it's almost like a ballet to get that right. But that is really important in the pre-oral phase, to tell the person what they're getting on their spoon or their fork, the size of it, and when they're ready for it, and also test for temperature. And lastly, in this phase, to think about saliva. Now, some people with many long-term conditions have real problems with saliva before they even start, or controlling saliva before they even start eating and drinking, for very many reasons. It might be that swallowing is difficult, maybe their lip seal around saliva isn't that easy. Once you add in all the excitement of meal times, your salivary glands get really excited at meal times, because part of chewing is about mixing saliva with the food. So that's something to bear in mind, is that when you open your mouth, do you then start drooling? Is that embarrassing? Is it difficult? Whatever. So it's about thinking about the whole picture. But in this pre-oral phase, you haven't even got the flipping food in your mouth yet. You also need to think about whether it's food or whether it's drink. I'm going to start talking about food first because it's a bit more exciting, and then I'm going to talk about drink, right? So far, so good. Does this make it, am I rattling through this? Am I confusing anybody? Can't see anybody else. Yeah, thumbs up from Emma. I'm going to keep moving. So getting to the exciting bit. We've got our bit of cake. It looks delicious. It's got all the little blobs on it. We put it on our fork and we're ready to go. Now, we've looked at it, we've put it on our fork, we're bringing it up to our mouth. Now, what's the first thing we do when we bring it to our mouths? We open our mouths. The next thing we do is we stick our tongues out. Now, our tongue, I love the tongue, can you tell, is absolutely covered in tiny little papillae. So it's like your taste buds. And what that does is it will know what's coming in. So I'm sure we have all done it, is that you have a cup of coffee, and as you bring it to your lips, you burn your tongue, but you don't burn your whole tongue, you just burn the tip of your tongue, because it's only the tip of the tongue that just comes out to sort of explore what's coming. So going back to the cake on the fork, it comes up to your mouth, your tip of your tongue comes out, your lips are open, your jaw is open a bit. And what you do is you say, oh, yum, it's walnut and coffee cake. It's not going to be banana cake in my world, because bananas to be the work of the devil. So it will be banana. It'll not be banana cake. As I do that, I open my mouth, and at that point, I'm controlling the saliva, my breathing, and I'm waiting to see what's coming in. But I can still breathe, because the soft palate, if we go back to my diagram, this is where it gets a bit confusing. There we go. If we go back to this diagram, this soft palate is still down. Let me make it a bit bigger. And all that's done is the cake is sitting there now. All right. I'm then going to close my lips, and I'm going to start chewing. So you need quite good jaw movement, and your jaw move a bit like a cow in a rotary action, while your tongue moves in a figure of 8 to move the food or the cake around in your mouth, to smush it up. Let's call it technical, to smush it up and to mix it with saliva. This is the first stage of how we break down food. All right. Now, there are so many things that could go wrong at this point, because if you haven't got really good tongue strength, it might be that you can't move food around from side to side. Everyone has a preferred side. So I know my preferred side is the left, but some people know it's the right. And I might come back and ask you, do you know which one it is for you? You probably don't. The dentist will. But also, if you haven't got great lip closure, you might find that some of the cake will slip out the front of your mouth. You might also find that it sits in your cheeks, because as you're chewing, your cheeks move in and out to push the food back towards your teeth. All right. So if it's chewing around, think of a tumble dryer, you need to push the food back onto your teeth to smush up the food. You can still you can do this all day. Just because something goes into your mouth doesn't mean you have to swallow it. Think about chewing gum. You can chew that all day. This is under your control at this point. And I think that's really important. I know with kids, they're very good at spitting out things like broccoli. So they know that they don't like it. You keep going, quite frankly. They'll like it eventually, I promise. So at this point, you can still breathe. But if you think about it, if you can't control what's in your mouth, that food can shoot all the way over the back of your tongue and down into your lungs. Now, I'm not doing that to scare you, because you will know before it gets there, but I'm just thinking about all the places that can go right, but also can go wrong. Okay. So at the moment, it's all the food is sitting here and it's being chewed up. What a lot of people often find is if they haven't got really good tongue tip movement, a lot of food will get stuck on the top of their mouth, on their hard palate, and you often have to go and scrape it out afterwards. And that changes the way you feel about food if you're not able to really control it that well. So when you get to the end of that phase and you think, oh, time to swallow, you move on to the pharyngeal phase, which is the throat phase. All right. And this is where things get really exciting, because lots of things happen all at the same time. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you to do something. Can you all take your hands and put it on your throat? All right. And then just go, ah. Oh, yeah. Can you feel it vibrating in your throat? Yeah. That's your voice box. Your voice box is good for talking. That's your vocal cords, but it's also really important when you swallow, because at the point of swallowing, and try it now, if you've got saliva in your mouth now, put your hand on your voice box and swallow your saliva. And then tell me what you can feel. Miriam.
I'm just looking at the chat, and I just wanted to check with some people. Some people have said that they're having a problem seeing the screen.
Oh, that's
no,
not
it's
good.
fine. I just wanted to check whether that's still the case, or whether people have now got the screen. So if you can't see Jude's amazing cross-sectional picture of the human anatomy of the mouth and throat, please let us know, and then we'll see what we can do to sort it out.
I still can't see it. I don't know why. I could see everything to start with. It just disappeared, and I presumed that you weren't showing anymore.
So have you just got Jude's face, beautiful face?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's very lovely. But maybe maybe you should come out of the meeting, go out of the meeting and come back in and see if you're still having a problem with it. Is that okay? I'm sorry to interrupt, Jude.
No, that's all right. Is it just one person? Can most people see the...
Tony, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right,
Yeah,
so okay, that's fine. So we'll just we'll just let Janine come in and out, and then
Okay. If not, I can stop screen sharing and reshare it shortly.
yeah, I'll just keep an eye for when she
I
comes in.
was just trying to put my hand up, but I couldn't get the reaction button quick enough. I just wanted to say on the view, you know, on the right hand side of the screen, like sometimes at the moment, like I've got mine on as I presume it's automatically being set to side by side gallery, but others might be like on spotlight or on the person talking.
Oh, that might be why. Is that what
Yeah,
you're thinking, Dean?
You can do whatever you see. You say like, you know, I could put it on Judith if I wanted to, I could just put it onto Judith's you know, onto Judith's camera.
Okay, so Janine, can you see the screen now?
Yeah, I can see it now. I don't know what happened there, but it's all back
Don't
now.
worry, that's fine. I just wanted to check. Brilliant, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Jude.
No, that's absolutely fine. I can keep talking and I can stop talking, so that's fine. Are we all back, and have we all swallowed our saliva? And I just want to know what happened or what you felt when you swallowed. What did you feel on your voice box? I'm hoping.
It going down.
Genius. I'm so pleased. I was expecting somebody to say that, otherwise I'd be slightly worried. Yes. Oh Lord, I'm not sure what's happening here with my slides. And I've no idea what that line is. You're absolutely right. What happens at the point of swallowing is this thing, which is really bad on this image, moves up and it moves forward. All right.
Yeah.
What that means is when you swallow, at the point of swallowing, you cannot breathe. It's nothing to worry about. But that's probably something, that's why people say don't talk and eat at the same time, because you need to coordinate both. Because what happens at the point of swallowing is that your soft palate, the wobbly thing that hangs down, pushes up. I've lost my cursor, right? Goes up so that no food and drink can come down your nose, all right? I bet most of you, because I know it's happened to me, when you're not paying attention or when you're really tired, especially with liquids can suddenly shoot down your nose. Is that something that sounds familiar to people?
Yeah.
I can see some nods, yeah? That's because you're just not coordinating the swallow, point of swallow, the reflexive bit that kicks in just about here with everything, with all the anatomy. All right, so it's really easy to do. It's often with fizzy drinks, and flipping heck, it hurts. So I wouldn't recommend it as something to do often, but it does happen. But that's not within your control, because once the food or the drink hits just below there, after there, and it's moving that way, you can't control what happens to it. All right, so at the point of swallowing, we're back to plumbing. This moves up. The tongue pushes the food or the liquid back towards the back of your tongue. Now, unless this flappy bit flaps over your larynx, your airway, that food is going to be shunted straight down into your lungs, and that's not going to be a good thing. So what happens when at the point of swallowing is that your vocal cords, come together in your voice box. It rises, which is what you felt, and then you felt it coming back down again. And as your larynx rises, it pushes this flap over the top of your airway. It's really clever as a double whammy to make sure no food or drink goes down into your lungs. At that point, that little muscle relaxes and the food goes down into your food pipe. Then immediately your larynx goes down, you breathe, and your epiglottis pings up again, and you're ready for the next mouthful. All right. Now, sometimes food and drink get stuck either in this crevice here, your valleculae, at the base of your tongue, and you can sometimes feel it. It's that whole kind of like thing, but it's too high up and it's not your airway. You know if something is going down the wrong hole. I'm sure we'll all had it. It feels like that thing if it's going down the wrong hole. It is, but there's loads of little sensors just here by your top of your voice box. And what do you do when things go down the wrong hole? What do you do? Yes, exactly. You cough. And what the cough does is it flicks anything out that could be going down into your lungs, right? So it's really canny. It's really clever. The challenge is, of course, if your cough's a bit overloaded, if it keeps on coming and it keeps going down the wrong hole, your cough goes, oh, shove off, I'm not doing this. And that can be where you get into chest infections, but that's very unlikely. So once the food or the liquid has gone down and it's sitting in your esophagus, we're now into the bit that you cannot control. This is so out of your control, it's not funny. It is your food pipe. It's sitting in the food pipe, and peristalsis, which is basically a pushy mechanism of muscles, pushes the food, which is now in some smushed up form or liquid, down into your stomach. All right. And there's another muscle at the top of your stomach, the bottom of this pipe, that opens to let the food down into your stomach. And then you start all over again. The only other thing I want to say at this point is we just need to watch out for reflux, because if the muscle at the bottom of your food pipe going into your stomach is a bit weak, or you're not sitting up straight, it's more likely to get reflux, which is like acid reflux, will come back up your food pipe and into your yeah, good, isn't it? So wouldn't recommend that, but it does happen a lot, and I wonder if there might be some questions for you guys around that. With liquids, it's a lot quicker. All right, so just to bear in mind that you won't have the chewy thing with liquids. So if you're thinking about your cup of tea or your pint of lager, whatever your tipple is, and you bring it up to your mouth, I'll come back to you, Dean, in 1 second, because I've just seen that hand, thank you. What you do is that your tongue cups on the sides, and your tongue tip rises and it pushes back much, much quicker. So it's a much quicker reflex. Dean, you've got your hand up. Have you got a question?
Yes, I have. Thank you. Yeah, you know, when you said I found it interesting when you said when the moment you swallow, you stop breathing.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of the thing between you swallowing, you stop breathing, it's gone down the wrong way, or whatever's happened, you're coughing. But sometimes before you cough, it sometimes happens to me. I find it difficult to sort of get my breath. I'm wondering, is that because you've already stopped breathing? That sometimes you get like, you know, a bit of like, you know, sort of like that sometimes.
Yeah, it could be that, but it also could be is that when you cough, when it's a little cough, just flick it out like that. But if you've got a bit more coming down on top of your airway, yes, because everything, and actually what happens is that your vocal cords close to try and protect. So they're going, we don't know what to do. We need to have open to get the air in, but we need to protect you. So they sometimes quiver a bit just to try and keep them open. So I think if that happens a lot, it's something to think about, and whether, you know, but if it happens very occasionally, it might just be that you were, you know, busy.
It happens more when I'm drinking water or drinking water really, or drinking something cold. But interestingly enough, well, not interestingly, but I've actually got Barrett's esophagus.
Oh, okay.
And which is where the lining of your esophagus goes into your stomach, and I have to take
omeprazole.
Yeah, omeprazole. I can never pronounce it. I can never pronounce it. And that is actually, and because before that, I was getting, like you just mentioned, acid reflux. And I didn't know at the time what it was until I went for because I had
a bone swallow.
I was having where they think this blood, the blood's leaking. Might be some blood that's bleeding in your body. I can't remember what it's called now.
I don't want to be too dramatic. I've got all
no,
sorts of words in my head,
it's not dramatic. No.
Yeah.
But sorry. They did the investigation and said, basically said when they put the powder, Barrett's, and that's when it got discovered. So anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on. Sorry about that.
No. It's really interesting because we're back to plumbing, and I think that's why you're probably getting a bit of sort of backup of food, because if it's here, that's where it is, and things will be moving slower. So things might be trickling back as well. So we could talk about this all day, Dean, but perhaps we won't at this point, but we can link you to the right people later on, which is good. Okay. Now, what I have for you, if you're interested, is if I have got a moving x-ray of somebody swallowing.
Whoa.
What do you reckon, guys? Are you up for it? Yeah? Okay. No? Oh, man. Are you just screaming? Who's that? I can't see.
You'll be fine, Becky.
It will be fine, I promise. I don't know what this blue line is on my screen.
No, I was clapping my hands. I wasn't.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Now we've got this weird blue thing here. I think my cat was walking over my screen and did something earlier, so I apologize, but it shouldn't get in the way, all right? Now this is called a video foroscopy. It's what you have if you go into hospital, if the speech therapist is worried about your swallowing. What this does is it's basically taking the picture that I was talking about in a real person. Ethically, we can't cut you in half to do it, so we use x-ray, all right? What we have is anything white is air, right? Anything black is bone. And what you give somebody to eat or drink will be black because it is mixed with barium so that we can see it, all right? So if we, doesn't really help having this massive thing in the way, but if you can see, that's the spine going down there. Can you see that? That's the person's back of their skull. And that is their eyes. That's their eye socket, all right? That's their jaw. And that is the top of their mouth. Now this will go away in a minute. Those are their teeth, okay? So I'm going to show you, I think they start with solid, but what you will see is somebody chewing. This is a normal swallow. This isn't somebody who's got anything wrong with them. They were just put in front of a screen and said, do this, okay? Are we ready, lads? So here we go. So in goes,
Oh.
yeah, right. And down it goes. Now there, let me just, oh, hang on, they're going to have a drink now. Cereal drinking. Right, I'm going to stop there. Oh, flipping it. Right, to see, I'm loving your face, Mandy. This is making me smile enormously. Right, I'm just going to stop to show that I was not lying about the anatomy. That is the epiglottis. That's the flappy bit I was talking about on top of the larynx. That is the vocal cords. All right, that's my lovely tongue.
Whoa.
And that is the roof of your mouth, and they've got a very long uvula. That's the flappy bit that you'll see move, all right? As you can see, at the moment, nobody's drinking anything. The food pipe is closed. It's just there, all right? This is liquids. You ready for more? Sorry, Mandy, it's really cool, really, I promise. All right, now you can see the voice box going up and down. Up, ready, up and down.
Whoa.
Up and down.
Whoa.
Chewing. This is a biscuit now. You see, chew, 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 takes a bit longer. Still breathing. And then you'll see the soft palate close and
Oh, God.
and you do that every day. Now this is full frontal. All right. So let me just stop the, oh, sorry, it's not playing. Come back up again. I'm going to go back a teeny bit just to, where are we? Right. So that is the jaw. So now it's face on. That's your spine, all right? And then a bit later on, you're going to see the shoulder blades, just as things go down. And you can just see how it goes down the food pipe, all right? It's going down, chew, chew, chew. So Dean, you've probably got Barrett, so it'll be a lot narrower. And then it goes all the way down into, that's your heart, and into your stomach.
Whoa.
Right? Yeah. Below your members. So there you go. That's a normal swallow. Does that make it a bit realer now that you can see it's not just me making stuff up? This is real. This happens. And we have been doing this since we were born. That's what I find magic, is that this is what we all do hundreds of thousands of times a day, every day. Yeah. And we don't even know we're doing it. But as you can see, there are so many bits that if any bit of this timing goes wrong, you can see why people get into a pickle. Now, what I have next, if you're up for it, you don't have to, is when somebody aspirates, when drink goes down into their lungs. Do you want to see that or not? I'm getting, yeah? You're up for more, lads. Sorry, Mandy. It's good, right? You enjoying it? Right, let me see.
It's fine.
I can't leave this on. Oh no, we've seen this one. Yeah, enough of that now. I don't know why. Why can't I move? Oh, there we are. That's why. All right. This is a different person. This is normal. This is a teaching video mainly for speech therapists. So that's why it's got different words all over it. But basically, yet again, this is your flappy bit. That's the esophagus. That's your jaw. Because the face isn't completely lined up, you can see most of the jaw. So you're getting a bit of that as well, just to know what you're doing. I think we have to sit through a normal swallow first because I don't know how to drive the video. All right. So let's go. What do we get first? All right, food enters the esophagus. This is so American. All right, not trachea. So this is going to go down the right hole. All right, so again, voice box. Now here we go. We're going to see it going down into the airway.
Oh,
All right, do you see that? That you can see the vocal cords there. Now this person isn't coughing. That's the thing. I can show you that again if you want. All right, so you're going to have to see the normal swallow. There's the vocal cords. Keep an eye on them. This is the normal swallow now. All right, up and that, fine. This is the normal swallow. That's these are the vocal cords here. Because the voice box isn't really rising enough, the voice box...
It gets caught.
It gets caught, exactly.
that's amazing. God.
I know. So that's the challenge.
Oh.
I'm loving all the words. I'm sure there are questions about that. I'm happy to show it to you as many times as I like, because I could talk about it forever, but shall we not? All the squeamishy bits are over now. And this is really when we talk, I'm more interested in you guys now. I just wanted to give you a bit of the back history before we start talking about you guys and whether any of you are experiencing any problems, right? So I think the things we need to think about in particular are posture, fatigue, what you eat, and how aware you are of whether you're eating and drinking and what's difficult or what's easy. So now you may recognize some of these, you may not. I'm really sorry about that blue line. It's annoying me probably more than you. So ignore the blue line on the screen. So, oh, it's not even me. That's brilliant. I'm loving it. I promise that's not me.
Sorry, I was trying to see if I could delete it, but it,
no, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, Becky, you can if you press the pen button, but I don't know where it is.
That's what happened to me by mistake.
I'm loving this. That it's
With
even
the
you guys.
blue line.
On the iPad, there's a pen button and there's an eraser button in the pen button.
yeah,
Okay.
but I think you can only erase your own lines. So
Oh.
I think only Judith would be able to do it.
Oh, I have the power, do I? Well, in that case, I'll probably erase everything. So I'm going to leave it.
No.
Thanks for the thanks for the tip. I'm learning something every day that what I can do. So I think the first sign of somebody having a problem swallowing is often that they're saying, oh, I know I don't like eating minestrone anymore. And maybe that's something that you've noticed, is that you're changing what you're eating and drinking. And that's something just to be aware of, is that what else is going on with your swallow? Now you've seen how you do it. It may be that if something is very quick, like drinks, that often is something that people want to avoid, because you've got to control it much more quickly than something that is a bit more solid. So things like mashed potato can be too claggy for some people, but for other people become much easier. Things like, you know, very crunchy things like toast or peanuts seem to be an absolute nightmare. Tomato seems to be a real challenge for people, but that's because it's a bit liquidy. It's got the outer skin, it's got the inner pulp, it's got the seeds. It becomes very confused in your mouth. Things can get stuck under your tongue and can get stuck under your dentures. It can be all over the place. So people often say, oh yeah, no, I've avoided these kind of things. If you suddenly notice that you're losing weight, now I'd love to lose weight, but that's because of me consciously not eating chocolate. But if you suddenly don't want to lose weight and you're finding it a real problem and you think, well, why am I losing weight? Is it because there's something wrong with your swallowing? Things are becoming more difficult or more labored, or maybe something's just knocking off somewhere in the system. If you find that meal times are taking you, I think, more than half an hour, 40 minutes tops, I think it is probably we need to look at we being the speech therapists need to look at the texture of what you're eating, how you're eating, and what time you're eating, because no meal should take longer than that. Because number one, it'll be cold and it'll be quite unappealing, but also you're going to be knackered and you're going to be spending all your calories just flipping chewing this stuff, and it's taking too long. You're not going to get any benefit out of it. So it's something around thinking about what you're eating. So could you eat smaller amounts of really dense calorific stuff that doesn't take you 40 minutes, rather than trying to still get through, you know, your meat and 2 veg just because you've always done it. There are different ways of getting the right amount of calories into you. We've touched on coughing when eating and drinking. Now, it might be that you start by going, yeah, every time I have water, I cough. Why is that? I would want to know, does it happen every time you have a drink? Is it because you glug it? Do you take small mouthfuls? Are you using a straw? Are you lying down when you do it? Is it the same for fizzy drinks, hot drinks, cold drinks? I'm a speech therapist, I'd ask lots of questions. But I think if you're finding there are certain things you're eating and drinking that are making you cough consistently, again, I would suggest you note it, either if you just take a note in a diary or something and contact a speech therapist if it's significant, if you've got one or more of any of these other problems. We've already, again, thank you so much, Dean, touched on the fact you get shortness of breath when you're eating. Again, it might be because food is either coming up from your food pipe into your airways, or it's shooting down the back of your tongue too quickly, and all of the sensory bits around the top of your airway going, I can't cope anymore, and you stop coughing, but it still goes into your lungs. And of course, what happens in your lungs is that's where you breathe from. The other thing to think about is if food gets stuck in your mouth. So does it get stuck under your tongue? Does it get stuck in your cheeks? Does it get stuck on the roof of your mouth? Does it fall out the front of your mouth? What's changing? Is it because things are getting weaker? Is it because of the time of day or whatever? And again, recurrent chest infections. Sometimes there's 2 sorts of aspiration, and you may hear colleagues talking about aspiration, which is when food and drink goes down into your lungs. It's either aspiration, which is when you cough, or silent aspiration, when you don't cough. And when you don't cough, that's the thing to be more worried about, because you've lost one of the mechanisms you've got to try and help protect your lungs. The other thing to think about is whether your voice changes, or if your voice sounds gurgly when you're eating and drinking. Is it because there's some food or liquid just sitting on your vocal cords? You know, when you gargle, when you're cleaning your teeth sometimes, that's because that's when your vocal cords are vibrating and the liquid is being bounced off your vocal cords. Now, it's fine if you're gargling, but if you find that happening when you're eating and drinking, you might just want to be thoughtful about why that is. And if you've got difficulty swallowing pills, we all know pills are an absolute nightmare, and especially if you've all got lots of big cow pills to swallow. But if you were managing them fine and then they suddenly become really difficult, again, it's just sort of thinking about how you can make it slightly better for you and get some help. So what you can do for yourself is to monitor it. So I often ask people to keep sort of almost like diaries of when in the bestest time of day and night for you to eat and drink, what is difficult, what makes you cough, thinking about what you're eating. Is it the really crumbly, multi-layered stuff that's more difficult, or is it that you're finding that actually trifle causes your problem, but if you eat mashed potato, you're fine? If you find things are really hard, just stop them. There's other options of things you can eat and drink. Thinking about the mouthfuls, how quickly you're eating. Are you taking really big mouthfuls, try and cram it in because you think that's safer? As you know now, having you seen, probably not. You need to think about your poor muscles and how they're going to work. You can self-refer yourself to a speech therapist locally if you have any problems. You don't need a GP. We're trying to get a GP appointment. It's like, good luck, guys. So you can self-refer to your local speech therapist. If you don't know who that is, I would phone the local hospital. They would probably have a speech therapy department and they can tell you where the community one is, or if there's a community rehab service, or maybe you're hooked into that already. However, if you are choking and you can't unchoke, you call emergency services. Don't think that you can get out of it. And there's some really good advice on the UP website, which I'm sure you've all read, and see how it goes. So as you can see, just having knowledge of what can and can't go right is really important. And I could keep talking. I'm sure I've missed loads, but I'm going to stop now and open the floor. So thank you very much for being so patient with me. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you all. I don't really want to be the big screen person. I might have to change my setting of view. There we are. Gallery.
So
Oh,
Jude,
that's better.
so if anyone's got a question for Jude, either write in the chat, put your hand up, and we'll try and take as many as we can before the end of the session. And Dean has been hot off the mark, so I'm going to find Dean and spotlight him for everybody. There we go, Dean, you can ask your question.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, when you're talking about different foods, and you were saying that sometimes you might have you might find mashed potato easy, or the other way around, or trifle difficult, or certain food difficult. If you're having problems with certain foods, sometimes is it particularly if you're eating the same kinds of foods all constantly in your diet? You know, if they're a regular part of your diet, could it just be a simple case of sometimes just taking a break from those things and eat more soluble, more easy to digest foods, and you're just giving your parts of your swallowing mechanisms a break?
No, absolutely. Yeah. If you think something's difficult, then stop doing it, really, and just keep a note of what is difficult or what's easy. So absolutely. And actually having a varied diet is probably the best thing you can do. And I think, you know, if you've got any worries or interesting thoughts about it, you can always see a dietitian and see whether they can give you some suggestions about a more varied diet, for example. So absolutely, yeah. If something's difficult, then stop doing it.
I liked your comment about the tomato as well, because there's all different textures, like you said, there's all different textures in the tomato. Well, I never thought about it before until you said it.
Yeah, no, tomatoes are notoriously challenging. Yeah. Who knew?
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Does anybody else have a question for Jude? I know there was quite a lot. Oh, Tony, you've got a question.
Yeah, my question is really, how can you reduce the amount of saliva in your mouth generally?
That is a question I'm asked so often. Everybody produces at least a litre of saliva a day. It's a lot of saliva, less at night, but there is still quite a lot going around. It's really hard. I mean, the short answer, Tony, I'm sorry to say, is it's really hard. However, because if it was easy, a lot of people would have sorted it out by now, because it is a real challenge. Sometimes people get patches, hyoscine patches, which dry up your mouth, but I'm not a great fan because it dries out your eyes and everything.
It doesn't seem a very sensible solution unless you really need to do that.
I agree. It's really, I wouldn't, yeah, I agree. I'm not a great fan. Some people take, can get some botulinum toxin injections into their salivary glands, which is short-lived, but that works if it's a real problem. Some people find just swallowing more often and being more conscious about it, but that is tiring and you can't always do that. And if you're talking or whatever, it's really hard to manage. I think if it's something that's really upsetting you, I would suggest trying to chat to your local speech therapist, because they can then look at some bespoke options for you.
Yeah, I asked it really. I get two things. One is the social aspect, is that when I'm talking to people, and especially when I'm in a stressed situation, it can be very embarrassing to spit all over them. And the other thing is that I discovered I had this bad thing of walking out on a freezing day in shorts and t-shirts, which is a very odd thing to do. And I find that worked really well. But the next day I feel really poorly. And I realized what was happening is that because I got so much saliva in my mouth, when I was going out and breathing through the nose, it was all getting into the chest
Mm.
And I realized I could get around that by wearing a neck warmer over my nose and mouth, and that cooled the air, and that prevented the problem. But the problem with that is that when you wear a neck warmer, all my glasses steam up, so I can't see where I'm going. So if I meet someone in the street, I can often not know who I'm talking to, which is really embarrassing. But what the brave thing is that it'd be nice to reduce the amount of swallows before I got up and not have all these problems and find some way of reducing the amount of saliva generally. And I was wondering whether if I throughout the day started to suggest being more conscious of swallows, it would become more automatic. But I already think like that. So I just wondered whether you had any thoughts about that.
I think you're right. I mean, you could try swallowing more regularly. That's definitely a good thing to do, but it's quite, especially when you're talking and you're getting very animated, you clearly have a huge amount that you want to share, then that's quite hard to think about swallowing consciously and then talking and what you wanted to say. And it takes a lot of head space about it to do.
Indeed. But I think it's the more general thing I'm trying to make the swallowing more automated. And so that the swallow occurs when the mouth isn't so full of saliva. I don't know whether by practice that can be, that you can automate that, or whether I just have to live with that.
It may be worth trying to see how more conscious you could be about swallowing, but then what does it do to your, what does it distract from your world? I think if it's something, I would definitely try and contact your local speech therapist, because Botox in particular can be really helpful. And they just inject it, and it lasts about 3-4 months, and it really does reduce the amount of saliva. The trouble is that you do need some saliva to be able to swallow safely and carefully.
What does Botox do?
Botulinum toxin is basically what all the beautiful people do. They sort of inject it into their faces to get rid of wrinkles, but it's the same stuff. So what it does is it's a toxin, but it oh, help me out, Miriam. It
reduces the muscles.
There you go. It reduces the movement of the muscle. Don't need Miriam. It's
okay.
It stops things moving. It paralyzes. That's the word I'm looking for. It paralyzes the movement, and then it paralyzes the. Thanks, Harriet. Phew, got that right. Got the word out. So it's about how you use that. So what you do is you paralyze the amount of saliva that is produced from that organ. But it's
so, just not wanting to butt in, Tony, but I know that we've had a conversation about it. I think, in essence, the answer to your question is because, as Jude has shown, that a lot of swallowing is not under your conscious control. That there isn't a way of just doing lots and lots and lots and lots of practice, which will make you be able to manage your saliva better. But there are some other things that you can do to help yourself. And yes, you can do it consciously, but that's also going to muck up some of, be tiring for you, but also it might interfere in your interactions, which is something that you want to avoid, the disturbance of your interactions. It's kind of maybe not what you want to be thinking about.
Indeed, but I can set up a regular reminder throughout the day when I'm not interacting with people to just to remember to swallow, to make it more automated and so that I'm more aware how much life is going on in the mouth. But from what you're saying, that probably won't work very well.
I think it will be tricky.
Yeah.
I think you need some, what I would suggest, as I said, is you probably need some personal support and thinking about it locally.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Tony.
Now I see
Miriam.
Dean's got his hand up. I also saw Ruth Ann had her hand up as well earlier.
Let's find Ruth Ann. Where is Ruth Ann?
I've
Here we go.
unmuted myself.
I'm going to add a spotlight. There we go. Oh no, wrong person. There we go. Sorry. As you can see, I'm really good with technology. Now I can't remove it. I'm not going to touch you. Hold on. Let me just find Ruth Ann. And Ruth Ann, have you got? There we go. I think maybe it's because you had your video off.
I've got my video.
There we go. Now I've lost you, but there we go. Try that.
Okay.
Hi, Ruth Ann.
Hi. So basically, one, I get recurrent chest infections. That's the main thing. And number two, I have problems like with swallowing, and I could choke on sometimes it's basically water and food sometimes.
Okay. When you say, oh gosh, I've got more questions than answers really for that one, Ruth, and I'm really sorry first of all because it's quite scary when it happens. I can imagine if it's making you choke, and also it's about how we manage the fact that you're getting chest infections a lot. I wonder, is going back to that slide about what time of day is it when you're very tired, for example, when that makes you cough and choke more. I've got more questions than answers. My bottom line, as I said, exactly the same as Tony. If this is happening more and more, I would really suggest you go and have a talk to your local speech therapist, because I think that would be really good. Because if you're getting lots of chest infections, now some of these chest infections might just be because the whole world and his wife are having chest infections at the moment because it's that time of year, and it's because there's, you know, we've all been under COVID and everybody is not sure what they're doing. So I think it's about ruling out whether the chest infection is due to the fact that you're just really unlucky and it's cold weather, or how much of it is related to swallowing. And I think until somebody can come and feel your throat and have a conversation with you and really get into the nitty gritty, then I would love to give you advice, but I don't think I should, because I think there's probably, you saw the list of things that could go wrong and the list of things it's a complicated thing, that swallow. So that's why I've been doing it for so long. But also I think there are things that people can do, that you can do, and that you can work with your speech therapist to work out the best way of getting the right outcome for you, to make sure you don't choke on food and drink, and that maybe the chest infections are investigated. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I'm being a bit get out of jail card, but I just think that's probably the safest thing to say and do here.
I also think, Ruth Ann, from what you shared with us last week, that you've started to identify certain things that are harder for you to eat and drink. And just to reiterate what Jude has said, that if you already know that they're harder, then it is very legitimate to say, I don't eat those things because they're hard for me, and not to think that you want to persevere, because legitimately they might be causing you a problem, because there might be a breakdown somewhere. So it's okay to say, I don't eat apples, or I don't drink fizzy drinks, or whatever it is that's difficult for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep yourself safe.
Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.
I am going to ask Mandy, since I found you before, I'm going to try again. There we go. I'm going to take it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm never sure of this thing. it's really strange that this is the topic because I wasn't on last week, so I didn't know what this week's topic was. And I was talking about this very thing to my husband just the other day. And I've always had them. It's because of Christmas dinner.
Oh.
Or rather, other dinners round about Christmas dinner. And I had to say I can't eat steak because I can't eat certain meats because I find chewing very difficult. So I can't get it small, small enough to get it down,
Mm-hmm.
if you know what I mean.
I do.
And then it worries me. So when you put that thing up about there is all these foods that I've always avoided, and I always tend to eat like softer things like pasta, macaroni, and when I was younger I actually went through a vegetarian stage for a long time, and it was mostly because I can't eat the meats because like they choke me, and I find drinking really difficult, and I always found drinking difficult, but I didn't know that I found it difficult, if that makes sense. I used to just always avoid it. And I've just lately discovered a new cup that helps me to drink better because it's got like a spout on it. I've got it here, I don't know if you can see. And I feel that if I drink with a straw, then I can drink better. But what happened, I would say my drinking is worse than eating, but what happens to me, and I don't know if this is an anxiety thing or a physical thing, and this is really my question. So when I'm going to take a drink, I get worked up because I think it's going to choke me, and then I can feel like I get a CP spasm in my throat, and then when I do a drink, it feels like it gets stuck because I've went into spasm, but I don't know if it's because I'm anxious of choking or if it really just does it. So how would I know the difference?
That's a brilliant question, but I've got more questions than answers. Does that surprise you, Mandy? No, I think that it's so interesting that people often almost select themselves what they can and can't eat safely. So that doesn't surprise me at all that you're saying you're avoiding things like steak. Steak's a notorious challenge. Everything like that, mince meat and stuff is often a little bit better but that's still a bit bitty and grainy. Some people don't like that either. So it depends on what you find easy and what you find difficult. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Apparently pork is particularly difficult to eat. Who knows? I didn't know. For example, so there's all sorts of things that exactly anything is a real challenge. So, and it doesn't surprise me, rice is also apparently very difficult for some people, easy for others, depends on what you've got sources in it. I think with the drinking piece, I think a lot of it probably is worry, because if it has made you cough or whatever over a long period of time, then you probably do get a bit anxious. I'm not at all surprised the straw is easier because you can then control it a bit. But what you might want to see is whether if you try something with a colder temperature or a fizzy drink, that might be slightly easier because it gives your tongue, remember I was saying it has all those little sensory bits on them, it just gives it a bit more time to control that and get aware of what's coming through. But again, if you're really worried about it, I would get to see your local speech therapist because they may be able to give you a bit more advice locally. I'd want to do ask you a lot more questions. I'd want to have a look and a feel and all those sort of things, which I can't really do now because also you're not my patient, but also just to help you through that. I think there are things that can be done to at least allay your fears and your concerns, and there are things that you can do around other bits. So I would suggest going to see your local speech therapist if you're that worried about it, is a short answer. But it may be a mixture of both. It may just be a mixture of weaker muscles and your anxiety, and those two things you can do things about.
I do think it is the two things, and then they come together to make a bad combination.
Yeah. So if we can get you as well as we can and optimize what you can do, then that is going to be better for you. than forever you thinking, well, I'm going to take that out my diet because I don't think it's going to work, and I'm worried about drinking, and that you end up in a pickle with it. There are definitely things that I think speech therapists and probably dietitians can do to really help you get the right nutrition at the right and the right consistency, but also have a look at that swallow to really help you stay well with it all and not worry.
Thank you. Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Becky, I'm gonna come to you next. There we go. I wish my coordination was better. There we go.
I was going to ask about chewing, really, because similar to Mandy, I don't have so much trouble with drinking and with other things, but I've always had trouble with chewing, particularly meats and like things that are perhaps be considered tougher, if you like, in that kind of way, beefs and whatever. But I never really, well, I did have speech and language input, but only from the point of view of I was dyslexic. Nobody ever, as a kid in the 90s who went to a mainstream school and could swallow a lunch, that nobody ever thought to send me to a speech and language therapist for anything else.
Sure.
So my parents spent hours trying to get me to eat, particularly cold pork, which my dad really couldn't understand why I didn't like cold pork on a Monday. And in the end, my mum was like, can we just give up? Because I'm sick of sitting with her for 2 hours. But
my heart bleeds for you, Becky. I'm sorry.
But I just wondered whether, generally speaking, there are things that I get that quite often it's probably to do with tiredness and jaw movement and stuff. But I wonder whether there are general sort of principles, guidelines to do with chewing that speech and language therapists suggest are good for people, or otherwise not, things to avoid.
Cool, blimey, these are really good questions. Yes and no is the short answer, but you kind of get that's how I roll at the moment anyway, Becky. I do think that there are all sorts of, they're called theraspoons. There's all sorts of stuff you can do, but I again would only suggest that is done that is specific for you. You could buy a whole load of theraspoons on Amazon and chew away at them, but it would do you no good at all because they're not the right ones. Again, I would want to come and really have a look at you and get in your mouth and have a good feel and have a talk to you and work out what you're doing and really not give you cold pork ever, and think about really clearly what it is what you are struggling with. And I could probably think of things off the top of my head that you would really struggle with, and I can imagine things like steak, like Mandy, is probably quite tricky, things that are quite bouncy. I don't know where you sit with salad, for example, and whether that's okay. Or
yeah, it depends what type of salad. I'm a bit
so
specific about my lettuce. Yeah,
there you go.
And tomato, I never knew that about tomatoes. That explains so much. But anyway,
who knew that tomatoes were so challenging until you try and break down how they can fall apart? So a lot of people I know only have there's awful things from school, like those plum tomatoes. Remember the ones you get in school, because you can take the skin off them and that makes it easier. I just think you just put in a sauce and puree it, they're delicious, you don't have to worry about it. So there are things you can work around it, but there are certain foods that are notorious about that. So again, yes, you can do some muscle strengthening exercises, but they have to be specific for you. And you also have to then weigh it up with everything else that's going on, especially around fatigue levels and when you do them, etc., and what time of day. But there are definitely things that can be done. So again, I would suggest go and find your local speechy and they can just talk you through that, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Fabulous. Shard, I'm going to come to you now. If you want to ask your question.
What I found that helps me is drinking through a straw. So I've been drinking all my life through a straw. So like I can drink stuff without a straw. I rather to drink with a straw because it opens my airways. All the fluid passes really quickly. So it doesn't make me close my throat as much, if you know what I mean.
So it doesn't make you cough, is that what you mean?
No, yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay, yeah, No, that, and actually it gives you more control of it. Sometimes I think it's like Marmite. Some people find straws really, really helpful, and some people find straws really difficult. So I'm really pleased it works for you. And I think, you know your body's best. You know what's good for you and what works for you. So in the same way that, you know, Becky's been avoiding things all her life without realizing, so has Mandy. You've all probably been doing that. We've all been doing that. So I think if a straw works for you, then absolutely keep using a straw. I think that's a really good observation.
A lot of people that come to you can't use a straw as much.
It depends on how controlled you are with you. You've probably got very good control of your tongue and your lips in particular. And that's probably why you're so good, because you need your tongue to really control that suck up the straw. It adds a whole new level, but some people find it really helpful.
Okay.
And I think to finish, I think Miriam's got a couple of questions that come through to her that she wants to ask on behalf of some people. So I will
thanks, Emma. This is on behalf of Georgia. It's quite an interesting one, but I think I know the answer now, having listened to Mandy as well. She's asked, do you have any advice on when you start choking because on thin air for no reason? Is that correct, Georgia?
Yeah, because I choke when I've got food in my mouth too, but I also tend to choke on thin air for no apparent reason. That I can be absolutely fine and talking away and then just randomly choke, and it's rather annoying.
And that's really horrible, isn't it, when that happens, when you're not expecting it. In a way, I wonder whether it's going back to Tony's question. It might be saliva, because you're not thinking about swallowing. You're too busy talking or watching or doing or whatever. You're not concentrating on it. And saliva has a really nasty habit, because it's the same temperature as your body and it doesn't really taste of anything. It has a knack of finding its way into all the nooks and crannies. And I can see that if you're reclining slightly at an angle for most of the day, saliva will want to shoot over the back of your tongue. It's probably sitting in that, remember that link, that little gappy bit between the back of your tongue and your epiglottis, and then it will just trickle over down into your airway when you're not expecting, because you can't feel it coming. So I don't know what the answer is, apart from to keep swallowing. But if it becomes really, really hard, you know, then again, see a speech therapist. There's a theme here. But it's probably not air that's making you cough. It's probably saliva. But the good thing is you're coughing. That shows that you've got a really good safety mechanism at the top of your airway, and it's stopping it going down the wrong hole.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you for clarifying this.
And Miriam, do you have any other questions that come your way? No. Oh, that's really great timing. I've certainly learned a lot tonight. Thanks, Jude. I didn't know that fizzy drinks were easier, but now I'm actually imagining myself drinking my Diet Coke. I actually understand why. So that's a new one on me. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you all for coming. It's certainly been really interesting. Hopefully we've backed up a lot of what Jude has said on the website with information, partly because Jude was kind enough to help us to write it. So hopefully it's congruent with what she's said. If you have any other questions, then please let us know and we'll try and get them answered for you. And next week we have a general community chat where we can talk more about eating, drinking, swallowing and nutrition, and that will be followed by the week after, where we're either going to have a nutrition or a dietitian come to talk to us a little bit more about the types of foods that we can eat, which might help us both with our physical activities, but also with something that Jude mentioned was about the length of time that food has taken us and how we can get more calories in a shorter space of time too. And again, if you've got any questions for the dietitian before she comes, please let us know. We can feed them to her before she comes to make sure that she covers those points. But for now, I'd like to thank Jude again for coming. if it's okay with everybody else, we'll put this up on our YouTube channel, because I think we've talked about some really interesting things. Again, we will leave it a couple of days, so if anyone has any objections to it going out in full, we will cut it at various points. So, but thank you very much, and we will see you this time next week.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much,
Bye, everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
I really enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.